from the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight as we celebrate a historical day in Denver. Russell Wilson, the new starting quarterback for the Denver Broncos, and we couldn't be more thrilled to break down and discuss some of the things that came from his press conference as we sat through that today. Benjamin Allbright, still dressed for the occasion.
I just dressed for the show. I don't know
what
you're
talking about,
Ryan.
Yeah.
You didn't even. We had Russell Wilson come to town. You went to put your best foot forward, and you went with the sleeveless, the short sleeves.
Yeah, well, it was one of those I knew
you did wear your fancy new coat though.
I did wear my fancy new coat, but I knew I couldn't compete with you, so it wasn't one of those I'm going to show up peacocking like you are, only to know that it's just going to be second best. So in me, I just went, I'm going to go casual. I'm just going to be me.
I'm a peacock. You got to let me fly.
Exactly. They don't fly, but yeah, it is what it is. Let's just let you keep rolling on that. All right, so press conference today. Boy, it was a lot of fun. Russell Wilson's energy, electric. Nathaniel Hackett cursing to start things off, which was outstanding. Hey, man, I tell you what, it's like so many years of really tough days in Broncos country to finally get on the other side of this, and the energy, enthusiasm, it was just palpable today.
Well, yeah, Nathaniel Hackett's like a kid in a candy store, man. It's so
he
funny.
Couldn't stop smiling.
He's that guy, though. It's so funny to watch because you think head coach, and you go back over the list of Broncos head coaches, and you had old man Fangio, and he was fun, but he was he's kind of crotchety old guy. And then you had but prior to that, you had Vance Joseph, who was very very stern faced most of the time, who wouldn't joke in public, and Gary Kubiak is a good guy, but again kind of stern faced in public, and John Fox, and you get Nathaniel Hackett, and this dude just looks like he is a kid in the toy store. I want that one, and I want that one. He's just that guy. You stand next to him for 2 minutes, and I swear you feel like you drank a Red Bull.
It was great, and I loved how George Payton sort of shared a bit of an anecdote about how he approached Nathaniel Hackett with, "Hey, what do you think about the idea of getting Russell Wilson?" As they were kind of getting deep into that, the negotiations, the possibility of him coming here, and he said, "Bleep yes." I can't really say the word,
right?
And then he followed up. George's like, "Well, maybe you should watch some film." He's like, "I don't need to watch film. The guy kicked my butt for several years in a row. I know everything I need to know about Russell Wilson."
Yeah, and that's what it is. This is something that's been in the back of the Broncos' pocket for a long time. This is something that they've kind of had their eye on this situation for a long time. When the Rodgers situation didn't work, they had a Russ situation come up. They were blessed to have the multiple options this kind of offseason, and they got the guy. And I think that Broncos country is going to be really happy. Russ is going to remind you of Peyton Manning in a lot of ways, at least in his approach. Now, on the field, it'll look a little different. Peyton was hyper accurate underneath. Russ got a little more athleticism. Peyton naked bootleg aside. Russ got a little more athleticism in him, and
the deep pass.
And great with the deep ball. Number one pass from the deep ball since 2016 in the NFL. So Broncos country is going to be happy. KJ Hamler was in attendance today at the press conference, and I think he could be a big beneficiary of bringing Russ in.
Well, he's the guy that draws the closest comp to Tyler Lockett, right? If you're going to say there's a guy on this team that's like Tyler Lockett, it's KJ Hamler. But boy, listening to Russ talk about his skill position players, goosebumps, man. Especially when he started talking about Jerry Jeudy, he's like, he's a star. He's like, you see any matchup he has, he can win at the line. And I kept thinking, boy, I just wish the previous regime would have seen him the same way, because when he came out of Alabama, was drafted in the first round by the Broncos, they drafted him to be a star. They drafted him to be a wide receiver one, and the returns haven't been there yet. Now, he got hurt last year. There was a little bit of that. He's had some drop issues, but the quarterbacking he's about to see is a significant jump from anything else he's seen.
Well, absolutely. And, he's going to have to, Jerry Jeudy is going to have to reassert himself as the guy he was when the Broncos drafted him. He's going to have to come out and be that guy. And Russ is not, he's like Peyton Manning. He's not going to take it. If you can't get out there and do it, he's going to move on to somebody else, throw the football to somebody else. And, he's a preparer, and he expects you to prepare at the same level that he does. And so that's going to, I think, for this young football team, having somebody who's been there, who's done it, and has the right approach to the game is going to be hugely beneficial for a young team that, let's be honest, is not used to winning. The guys on this team, the people that are on this football team, are the only guy that's left from the Super Bowl team is Brandon McManus. These guys are not used to winning, and Russell Wilson is.
Well, and you talk about him being a preparer. He talked about watching the entire Broncos season, including preseason, 3 or 4 times over the last week or two, right? He said on his flight back from, I think, Hawaii or something, he was watching the Broncos' entire season, watched every single game, and he went over on offense and on defense. He was watching everything about this team. So you talk about the approach, because that is very Peyton Manning-esque. Like that, like again, the style on the field is different, but the control, the expectations that go up within the organization, and just how prepared he expects everybody else to be on that level. The fact that he could sit there in his intro press conference rattling off nearly the entire roster if we really would have pressed him on it was very impressive to me.
And not just that, he's one of those eidetic memory people. He remembers faces and he'll remember names, and the press is going to kind of fall in love with him in the sense that he's going to remember them, as you go along on that kind of stuff too. So, exciting times for Broncos country. Exciting times. I think the expectation now is, playoffs or bust, I think is where you set the bar. Previously with the last couple of years with Keenum and Flacco and Bridgewater, you set the bar at 500, and they didn't meet it. Here, you're setting the bar with Russ at a minimum the playoffs, and probably that would be disappointing if it was just the playoffs. But I think for a team that's still learning how to win, that's where you set the bar and you build from there.
Yeah, and he talked about winning being basically the only important thing. That's what he's here to do.
Winning's not the only thing; it's everything.
It's everything.
To paraphrase, and that's the thing with Russ. I mean, the first thing he said, there was the money quote from the press conference when he came out there and said that I came out here to win. That was the money quote.
Well, and he said that he got that vibe from George Payton and from Nathaniel Hackett. Like, he wanted to talk to them. He wanted to see their vision, hear their vision. And that was a little bit of what ultimately, I think, sealed this for him. Because remember, he did have the no trade clause. He could have said, even though the Broncos are a historic franchise and they have a history of winning, they've been losing for the last several years. It would have been easy for him to say, yeah, you know what, this isn't quite the right fit if he didn't get the right vibe. But he vibed very well, clearly, with Nathaniel Hackett and George Payton. The way the Broncos presented this, the way they put this whole thing together, was just top notch. And again, you have to tip your cap. George Payton throughout this entire process. You and I on Broncos Country Tonight, the radio show. We've been talking about Aaron Rodgers. We've been talking about Russell Wilson as the clear plan A for the Broncos, 1A, 1B kind of thing. And I think a lot of people sort of felt like, okay, well, that seems like a bit of a stretch, maybe even a pipe dream, because the Broncos, and this doesn't happen very often, to see guys in their prime, Rodgers not so much in his prime, but guys that are still playing at a high level get traded off their team. Franchise quarterbacks just don't get traded. But this one came together, and the way George Payton executed it was sensational.
I had the chance to chat with George just real briefly, after all the way off to the side, and one of the things that he kind of mentioned in that conversation was, we got the guy that's going to be here a few years. We didn't get the guy that's going to be 2 years and maybe done with playing. We got the guy who wants to win for a decade and has the capability of being in the league that long. And so they're super excited about that.
But it's a reminder, and even he was asked about playing in the AFC West, and this was my favorite quote of the whole thing. I asked about playing in the AFC West. He's like, why would you want? The question was about not just the AFC West, but the talent in the AFC West, especially the quarterback. Is like, why would you want to do anything different? He's like, I'm not afraid of anything. And I thought that was just unbelievable. And that's exactly what we've been saying for a long time. Because what happens is we have these on-paper conversations about what the division is or what this team and this team is going to be. Look, things change. Guys get hurt. Teams all of a sudden hit a bit of a lull. Remember the Chiefs last year, for example, they were really struggling for a good stretch of games, and people were wondering if people started figuring them out. Of course, they were able to get past it, and they figured it out, and they were good. But the point being is we have all these on-paper conversations. If the Broncos are competitive for the next 10 years, that means they're going to be in the mix of the top of the division for the next 10 years because you can't pencil anybody else in.
That's right. And so that's kind of thing. If you don't have a quarterback that's capable of making those plays at the end of the game, it doesn't matter what you have across the board on paper, you're going to be irrelevant. We saw that last year with Teddy Bridgewater. Now we got the guy.
Very exciting. Obviously, a lot to get to, including what's going to happen in free agency. We have some thoughts on that. Also, what's coming up with the draft, some changes there, of course, as well. For Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.